All right, let's talk about something that drives pretty much all of us a little bit crazy. Trying to make sense of complex rules and really messy logic.
Ah, you know the feeling, right? You're mapping out a process, and suddenly it's this web of conditions. Like, if the customer is a premium member and their payment is good, but the item is out of stock, what do we do then? It gets confusing, and it gets confusing fast.
But what if I told you there's an incredibly simple, super visual tool that can just slice right through all that confusion? A tool that literally guarantees you cover every single possibility, leaving zero room for error. And here's the heart of the problem. You add just a couple of if-then conditions, and the number of possible outcomes just explodes. Trying to track all of that in your head or in a long document, it's just a recipe for disaster, for missed cases, contradictions, and a whole lot of headaches.
So what's the fix? Well, let's meet the hero of our explainer, the decision table. Seriously, think of it as the ultimate cheat sheet for any complex logic. It's a powerful, elegant way to bring absolute clarity to your rules.
So what is it exactly? Well, at its core, a decision table is just a simple grid. It systematically maps every possible mix of conditions, you can think of these as the causes, to their required actions, or the effects. It draws a straight, visual line from if this happens to then do that. Simple as that. The whole thing is built on just 4 key parts, these 4 quadrants you see here. And honestly, if you can understand what each of these boxes does, you've mastered the whole technique.
So let's break it down. In the top left, you list your conditions. These are all the if questions you need to ask. Down below that, in the bottom left, you list all the possible actions, the then things you might do. Now the top right is for condition entries. That's all the yes, no, true, false answers. And finally, the bottom right, the action entries. That's where the magic happens. It's where you put an X to mark exactly which action happens for each rule.
Okay, so theory is one thing, but how do we actually build one? Turns out it's a surprisingly simple process. It really just boils down to 5 steps. You figure out your conditions, you figure out your actions, you do a little math to see how many rules you need, you fill in all the scenarios, and then you just define what to do for each one. Let's make this feel a bit more real with an example. Okay, let's get our hands dirty. We're going to use a super common business scenario. A company needs to figure out how to process customer orders based on a few rules. This is a perfect job for a decision table.
Okay, so steps 1 and 2, we got to identify our conditions and our actions. Our if questions are, is this a star client? Is their credit status good? And is the product in stock? And our then outcomes, the actions, are pretty clear. We can either reject the order, accept it, or pop it on a waiting list.
Now for step 3, and this is where the real power starts to show. We have 3 conditions, right? And each one has 2 possible answers, yes or no. So we just do the math. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. That's it. That's our magic number. We know we need exactly 8 rules to cover every single possibility. No more, no less.
On to step 4, filling in those 8 combinations. And there's a simple, systematic way to do this so you don't miss anything. For that first condition, star client, you just go 4 Ys, then 4 Ns. For the second one, credit status, you alternate every 2, YY, NN, YY, NN. And for the last one, you just alternate every single time, YN, YN, and so on. And look at that, a perfect, exhaustive list of every single scenario. And now for the final and, let's be honest, the most satisfying step. We get to apply our actual business rules. Let's start with this one. All orders of non-star clients with bad credit should be rejected. So now we just go to our table and find the columns where star client is no and credit status is bad. So after we apply all the business rules, this is what we get, our finished table. We just put an X to mark the right action for each column. So for example, look at rules 7 and 8. If someone's not a star client and has bad credit, we just reject the order. It doesn't even matter if the product is in stock. What we have now is a totally complete, 100% unambiguous guide for what to do no matter what.
So we did all this work. We have this nice-looking grid. So what? Why should you really care about this? Because this isn't just some neat little trick for organizing things. It is a genuine logical superpower. I mean, the power here is immense. It guarantees you've thought of every single combination. It forces you to see the gaps and contradictions in your own rules. And maybe most importantly, it becomes this crystal clear communication tool. Now everyone, from the engineers to the business managers, can look at this one grid and be on the exact same page. At the end of the day, a decision table lets you go from this confusing, tangled mess of words, to this, a clean, structured, and honestly beautiful grid. It's the difference between trying to navigate a new city with a confusing set of verbal directions versus just using a clear, simple map. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. What complex set of rules, what tangled up logic in your work could be completely clarified and perfected with a decision table? I bet you can think of something. Give it a shot. Thanks for watching.